You guys read the title. Today, I'll be showing you exactly how I won an 8v1 as India in Rise of Nations. I picked India and went for Tax Tech 2, which I believe makes it easier for a demo to have a very nice income early game where all the spendings are crazy expensive. I started off my factory setup, but as India, your goal should always to be forming the Maurya Empire as quickly as possible, because those buffs that you get when you form are crazy good, and without them, I wouldn't have won the 8v1. Also, you should always be justifying on Pakistan and Afghanistan first, because Pakistan is the most likely to be a player out of the five countries that you need to form, and if Iran is a player, Afghanistan is a main target for them. So taking Afghanistan early and Pakistan as well is necessary to make sure that you form. And in this game, Iran was a player, and he went right for Afghanistan, which will make it slightly harder to form, but it's no problem, as India is a much stronger country than Iran anyways. You guys are here to see me fight the 8v1, so let's cut right to me fighting Iran so I could form. I declared on Iran, and my troops were already split from taking over Pakistan, so I started off by auto-capturing him, as my plan was to just take Afghanistan and peace him and let him live, but that isn't how it went. I kept trying to peace Iran by just taking the land I needed to form, but he was not going to give up that easily. He was going to fight till the end by sending a good amount of infantry to retake his land and then start pushing into Pakistan and then India. I realized that this was not going to be an easy war, so I made a bunch of troops to get ready to fully kill Iran. No more mercy. I pushed extremely far into Iran and sent him a deal to take all of his land, hoping that he would finally surrender and stop the death of his people. And like a good person, he accepted, which allowed me to form and start my next step into preparing to fight for the 8v1. I made an amazing eco and just fight on Turkey, a player who was doing the ally the whole server strat, which I am not gonna let slide. I also didn't expect his allies to fight with him, so my plan was to take them out one by one. The white piece offers kept rolling in. I mean, this is exactly what I expected. What is Rise of Nations without bad allies? That's also why I usually never get allies, because most of the time, they're useless. Other than that, I started auto-capturing Turkey, and surprisingly, Russia did send a large infantry stack to support him, but that was the smallest thing he did. Make sure to keep watching to see how much support all of Turkey's allies eventually gave. Iraq now sent troops for support, along with Georgia training up troops in his lands, and Yugoslavia was allied to Turkey and he bordered him, so when I entered the European parts of Turkey, that's when he started to help out. Since now Turkey was basically out of the way, I sent troops up into Georgia, whose whole land was a fortress, but I moved around and maneuvered my way to its capital. Russia saw this as an opportunity and sent a crazy amount of troops to retake Turkey, so my only option was to scorch. This put me in a bad spot because now I lost almost all of my progress in occupying Turkey's lands. I decided to move out of Turkey and focus on Yugoslavia, because even if Russia does retake Turkey's lands, it will be hard for him to make an impact on the war, so focusing on a non-impacted player like Yugoslavia was a better choice to me than trying to retake all of Turkey's lands. I successfully defeated Georgia's troops on its capital and took it over, so I moved the troops into Russia to try and push him further back. Russia retook almost all of Turkey's lands, and now he was actually pushing into Iran, which was my base for reinforcing and sending more troops into the war. So I sent a bunch of troops to make sure that Russia doesn't do enough damage in Iran for it to impact me later on. I took almost all of Yugoslavia, but Russia also retook his land. So right now Russia is doing the most damage, but he isn't the only person who did a bunch of damage to me in this war. Other than that, I pushed into Iraq since I directly border him and tried to take over Yugoslavia's capital with the troops that I had in Yugoslavia. Yeah, I just fought on Saudi because how dare you decline my trade deal. I started to push back into Turkey with the troops that took over Iraq, and my attack in Yugoslavia was a success, as I took over his capital and continued taking over his other small cities so I could force peace him. Unfortunately, Georgia was able to take his capital back, but I started pushing into him again. I was able to finally force peace Yugoslavia, which is one person that is fully down at least in this 8v1. I also kept making troops in Afghanistan so I could push more into Turkey, Georgia, and then Russia, but I noticed something. The UK was trying to land on my mainland with 170,000 troops. He was able to land, but I made enough infantry to take care of that. but I made sure to spam a bunch of destroyers to make sure that no one can ever successfully land again. This could have been a huge setback, because if the UK was able to land and take a city as big as Mumbai, it would have extremely affected my stability and war exhaustion. I was a democracy, and I get more war exhaustion since I was one that declared, so I needed to make sure that no one could ever have the chance of landing again. I moved almost 2.5 million infantry into Georgia so I could take him out and then start pushing into Russia. Right now, Georgia is a barrier between me and Russia, so taking him out and getting all of his forts will make it harder for Russia to move into my land, but also much easier for me to eliminate Russia from the war, since currently he's doing the most damage to me. So instead of last time and just going for Georgia's cap, I decided that auto capturing and focusing on his much less defended cities would be better for me, because even if I do fail to take his capital, I'll be able to force peace him with all those cities that I get. I force peace Georgia, but then I saw a huge 700,000 infantry stack from Russia coming at me through the water. I had no attackers built, so I sent some fighters to see if they could damage his troops, but my fighters did nothing to his troops, so I sent a 60,000 stack into his troops that were in the water, but he was also beating them. So I had to send all my troops that were used to take over Georgia just to kill Stack in the water. I was able to defeat Russia's troops, so I started off by deleting all of the countries that I took over his factories because they were taking resources for no reason, as I did not need the factories that they had. I then pushed the troops that took over Georgia into Russia and trained them. I let them reinforce for a bit before starting my first attack of Russia's mainland. Russia became AI, so after I took a good amount of cities, I decided that I would start an attack on all of Europe. I put my troops that were in Russia near Poland, and then I sent infantry up to the UK to show him what happens if you try and land. I was going to be in another world war, this time against all of Europe. My justification on Poland ended, and I waited until my troops in the UK landed and for me to get cybernetics. So he did have some time to figure out that I was going to declare on him, but that was not going to save him. Yeah, this game pissed me off. It wasn't letting me declare because my destroyers that were next to the city the UK had in India. Anyways, I declared on Poland and flanked all of his troops defending the city on our border before going to Warsaw and taking it. I took over London and I started to auto-capture for a bit before the UK full scorched. I then decided to go into France, who was allied to Poland. I easily took over Paris, and France tried to retake it with 4,500 tanks and 100,000 infantry that instantly died while in battle with my troops. I then started to auto-capture all of Europe. Well, as you can see, I gave mercy to France so he could form, and Switzerland because, I don't know, he's just Switzerland. But I had the power to destroy all of them. This shows how OP you can be as India. So make sure to watch these two videos next for more content just like this.